On the show tonight, we will tell you how the US President Donald Trump is the world's biggest arms merchant, after he announced that the US will send Patriot missile defense systems to Ukraine through NATO allies. We'll also tell you how Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's hold on power is now hanging by a thread after the United Torah Judaism Party quit the coalition over disagreements regarding military draft exemptions for Jewish seminary students. And from Pakistan, we will tell you how the country is now all set to establish a national paramilitary force, which will handle internal security and counter-terror operations. All that and a lot more lined up for you on the show tonight. Let's get you started. Tonight, our top story is about US President Donald Trump. He has become the world's biggest arms merchant. Last night, he announced that the US will send Patriot missile defense systems and other top-of-the-line weapons to Ukraine, but not directly. This will happen through NATO allies buying American weapons. And it made us question, is this a security commitment or a business deal? Well, the US President and NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte stood together in the Oval Office to unveil the major strategic shift. The US will provide Patriot missile defense systems, but via sales to NATO countries. Exactly how this plan will work remains undetermined right now, and the timing is even less clear. According to some reports, in one proposed model, European allies would buy American weapons and then pass them on to Ukraine. They could send their own systems and then buy US replacements as well. What's more, Trump reportedly asked Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky if Ukraine can strike Moscow and St. Petersburg. And this is according to the Financial Times. That's during a phone call on July 4th. Trump told Zelensky to make Russians feel the pain and force Putin to negotiate. Zelensky reportedly replied that Ukraine could hit those cities, Moscow and St. Petersburg, if the US provided the weapons. Neither Kiev nor Washington have confirmed this conversation. After the call, Zelensky called it his most important, productive talk with Trump. But how is Russia reacting to Trump's warnings? Hear it for yourself.
Of course, as Dmitry Peskov said, we want to understand what is behind this statement on 50 days. It used to be 24 hours, and it was 100 days. We've all been through this, and we really want to know what motivates the President of the United States. It is clear that he is under enormous, I would say, indecent pressure from the European Union and the current leadership of NATO, who impudently support Zelensky's demands to continue pumping him with modern weaponry, including offensive weapons, at the expense of more and more damage to taxpayers in Western countries.
On Tuesday, the Kremlin warned that Trump's promise of more weapons and new sanctions could embolden Ukraine and further delay peace talks. Trump has given Russia 50 days to reach a peace deal while announcing the weapons deal for Ukraine. Then there's, of course, the question of America's Patriot missile stockpile. It's no secret, but it is under strain. The Pentagon has ramped up Patriot manufacturing, which, according to some experts, signals concerns about stock depletion. And that's after supplying Ukraine, then Israel, and of course, defending its own bases during the Iranian missile and drone attacks last month. The Pentagon briefly halted further supplies. The logistical and practical questions aside, Trump's NATO reckoning has started to pay off. Now, for months, Trump publicly criticized Europe's defense spending. He warned NATO allies in Europe that they are too reliant on the US security umbrella and demanded that they should increase their military budgets. Remember, earlier this year, he had even questioned, I'm quoting him here, "Why are we paying billions more? We have an ocean between us," calling for 5% GDP defense spending. Instead of the standard 2%, now NATO countries are responding. At the Hague summit, 32 members agreed to raise defense budgets to a combined 5% of GDP by 2035. That's 3.5% core military plus 1.5% on resilience. It might not seem a lot, but this is a major shift. Countries like Germany, France, Poland, the Baltics are already committing to meeting this target. Europe's defense spending surge is fueled largely by Trump's thorn-in-the-side approach, with assets shifting from economic GDP to military output. And according to some experts, this spending spree may have limited economic return unless investments prioritize equipment, R&D, and domestic industry. Now in the Indo-Pacific, US and Australia have launched Talisman Sabre war games, testing HIMARS rockets as well as F-35s. They're joined by Japan, France, South Korea and Singapore. And that's not all. The US has majorly increased arms sales to Taiwan, reinforcing its position amid rising Chinese military pressure, all without any kind of formal diplomatic ties. In conclusion, Trump has perhaps become the world's biggest arms merchant. He's not just sending weapons, he is changing how the world works. Because in this case, Ukraine gets weapons, Europe pays for them, NATO spends more on defense, and America makes money. It's a plan that mixes business with security, and it makes Trump look strong at home and keeps America powerful abroad. And while breaking news coming in less than 24 hours, the Western unity over Ukraine seems to be getting a reality check in a big statement. The EU top diplomat says that US should share the burden of arming Ukraine. Kala said that after a meeting of EU foreign ministers in Brussels, several European countries have also said that they were willing to buy US arms for Ukraine under a scheme announced by the US President Donald Trump yesterday, although arrangements still needed to be worked out. Trump wants European nations to pay, but much remains undisclosed at this point of time, including the amounts and precise types of weapons to be provided, how quickly they would be supplied, and how they would be paid for. US officials have suggested that European countries will be willing to give up some of their own stocks of weapons for Ukraine and then buy replacement from the United States of America. But some of the countries involved say that they still don't even know what is being asked of them. Such a move would get weapons to Ukraine more quickly, but would perhaps leave donor countries' defenses more exposed until new systems are ready. All right, moving on. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's hold on power is now hanging by a thread, literally and figuratively as well. Netanyahu's coalition faces a serious blow that's after a key political ally quit the government. We're talking about the United Torah Judaism Party, which holds 7 seats in the Knesset. It pulled out over Israel's attempt to draft ultra-Orthodox seminary students into the military. With that departure, Netanyahu is now left with a razor-thin one-seat majority in parliament. Netanyahu's coalition just has 61 seats in the 120-seat Knesset. According to reports, it is unclear whether the ultra-Orthodox party SHAS, which holds 11 seats, will follow the same path. If it does, Netanyahu could lose his governing majority altogether. At the heart of this crisis is a long-standing exemption that allows ultra-Orthodox students to skip mandatory military service. That exemption, in place since Israel's founding, has been ruled unconstitutional by the country's Supreme Court. Despite rising pressure, including from within his own party, Bibi has resisted any firm break with ultra-Orthodox allies who have backed him for years. But with Israel fighting on multiple fronts at this point of time for nearly 3 years, the Israeli army is demanding new recruits. Military leaders say that they urgently need more troops for ongoing operations. The IDF recently announced plans to draft 54,000 ultra-Orthodox men in the coming months. The army also promised stricter enforcement against those avoiding the draft. But even if both ultra-Orthodox parties abandon the coalition, Bibi's government might not collapse immediately. That's because the Israeli parliament will enter its summer recess on July 27th and will not reconvene until October. And that long break reportedly makes it nearly impossible to pass no-confidence motions or call new elections during that period. Bibi could remain in power with a minority government for several more months. Furthermore, backroom talks could reportedly still give out a compromise draft law, giving the ultra-Orthodox parties a way back into the coalition. Opinion polls by Israeli media show Bibi's current alliance is likely to lose majority in the next election. With the opposition currently holding the lead, the next scheduled elections in Israel are set for October 2026. Even as political uncertainty looms within Israel, the Israeli military has expanded its operations. Early this morning, Israeli airstrikes hit multiple targets in Gaza, Lebanon and Syria. In eastern Lebanon's Bekaa Valley, Israeli jets carried out more than 10 air raids targeting what the army described as Hezbollah positions. According to state media, Israeli strikes on East Lebanon killed at least 12 people. In Gaza, meanwhile, a series of explosions shook the enclave as Israeli tanks advanced near the border. Smoke was visible from inside Israel as well. The army warned civilians in northern Gaza to evacuate as it pushed westward towards the center of Gaza city. Israeli spokesperson urged Palestinians to move towards the southern town of Khan Yunis, specifically the Al-Mawasi area, which Israel has declared a humanitarian zone. Well, the IDF says it has dismantled a 3.5-kilometer-long underground tunnel route that it claims to include several tunnel hideouts in Gaza's Khan Yunis. Moreover, reports say Israeli naval boats also shelled western parts of Gaza city. In Gaza City, residents searched for survivors after an overnight strike hit a house in the Al-Shati refugee camp. Palestinian officials say that the blast caused multiple casualties, though the exact number remains unconfirmed. Palestinians could perhaps be seen using basic tools to dig through rubble in hopes of rescuing those trapped underneath.
We were trying to clear the rubble and remove the bodies and souls from under the rubble. We pulled out a man. Thank God he was okay, and he told us there were some children sleeping next to him. We are trying to pull them out. We don't have resources. We are using our fingers and hands to pull out people. With our nails, we are digging in the concrete to pull out people from underneath.
Well, a senior Iranian official claims that Israel used supernatural tactics during the recent 12-day conflict between the two countries. Abdullah Ganji, former editor of the IRGC-affiliated newspaper, posted on social media alleging that Israel used occult powers and supernatural forces in its war against Iran. According to him, residents discovered a few papers on Tehran streets after the war. These papers, according to him, had Jewish symbols and talismanic inscriptions on it. And he described the findings as a strange phenomenon. Ganji also referenced unverified reports claiming that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu allegedly met occult practitioners during the early phases of the Gaza war. He also claimed that Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, had warned that foreign intelligence services, particularly Western and Israeli agencies, use occult sciences and enlist jinns for espionage. The post gained traction online and drew a reaction from Israeli officials as well. Walid Ghadban, Israel's political advisor to the UN, reposted a Mossad message captioned in Persian, and I'm quoting what he wrote, "Jinn are everywhere," followed by a ghost emoji. Our next story is about Pakistan. A new national force is being created. Pakistan has announced the creation of a new national paramilitary force, the Federal Constabulary, but it has raised alarm among opposition leaders as well as rights groups. There are concerns that it could be used as a tool of political repression in Pakistan. Interior Minister Talal Chaudhary says that this force transforms the Frontier Constabulary, which is traditionally limited to Pakistan's northwest border, into a nationwide security force that will be tasked with internal security, riot control and counter-terrorism. It will be under the police, so that means greater scope of control. But here's the catch. It comes just days before Imran Khan's party plans major demonstrations on August 5th, marking 2 years since his arrest. Remember now, past demonstrations have turned violent, triggering a military deployment and further paralyzing Islamabad for days. PTI spokesperson Zulfikar Bukhari has warned that this move is a political tool and not a security upgrade. He says, and I'm quoting him here, "This should not be a gimmick to silence political opponents." But the timing of the move aside, this new force is not just about Imran Khan's supporters. Its jurisdiction will also now extend over Pakistan-occupied Kashmir as well as Gilgit-Baltistan. It means that the Pakistan state will now have a stronger hand over all these restive regions. Human Rights Commission Secretary Haris Khaliq has also raised red flags about this. He is alarmed at the lack of parliamentary debate over the creation of this new paramilitary force in Pakistan. He fears that civil rights will further suffer because of this move. And now, here's why this matters. Pakistan has a history of using paramilitaries as well as military courts to stifle dissent, to repress its citizens. Most notably after the 2023 demonstrations, when security forces were accused of firing on civilians, thousands were arrested, internet was shut down, and military courts handed out sentences, prompting widespread global condemnation from the US, UK, and even the EU. Pakistan's powerful military establishment, led by Field Marshal Asim Munir, has been tightening its grip. Tensions between Munir and Imran Khan is what helped fuel unrest following Khan's ouster in 2022. And now, experts suggest that PTI street power could force the military's hand or provoke a broader crackdown if demonstrations turn violent. And they have, like in November 2024, when security forces invoked shoot-to-kill orders. There are fears the military could step in directly. Pakistan's return to military courts and paramilitaries for political cases threatens its fragile democratic framework. The question is, what to watch next in Pakistan? The August 5th demonstrations. Will the new force deploy aggressively? Or will the Pakistani Supreme Court or Parliament challenge the changes or stay silent? We'll have to wait and watch. Let's now tell you what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. We will tell you how the CIA has released new documents that reveal Lee Harvey Oswald was on their radar months before he assassinated former US President John F. Kennedy. We'll also tell you how former US President Joe Biden saved his son from jail with an Autopen. Not just him, he has saved his near and dear ones from trips to jail with his Autopen. And finally, we will tell you savoring pizzas with or without ketchup may soon burn a hole in the pockets of Americans after US imposed 17% tariff on Mexican tomatoes. Syria is in the middle of a deadly sectarian conflict. Syrian government troops entered Suwaida, which is home to the country's Druze minority, and now Israel has entered the fray. The Syrian government claims that its forces moved into the region in a bid to end the clashes. According to reports, the confrontation left at least 100 dead and dozens wounded, while Damascus reported the loss of 18 of its soldiers during the fighting. In response, based on the direction of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Israel Katz, the Israeli military said it carried out targeted strikes on Syrian units approaching Suwaida. The IDF said that they hit convoys that included tanks and armored carriers advancing towards the city. Israel says it acted to protect the Druze population. Now, in a new development, an Israeli minister, Amichai Chikili, has given calls for Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara to be eliminated without delay. Suwaida lies within a zone that Israel has unilaterally designated as demilitarized. Tel Aviv accused Damascus of breaching that boundary by sending in a military. Syria has perhaps rejected Israel's claim to enforce a buffer zone inside Syrian territory and called the strikes a violation of national sovereignty. Syria's defense minister later announced a ceasefire agreement in Suwaida, which was reached through negotiations with unnamed local leaders there, adding that military police have been deployed in the area to oversee troop behavior and discipline. The situation perhaps reflects a growing uncertainty under Syria's new leadership after the ouster of longtime ruler Bashar al-Assad last year. President Ahmed al-Shara promised reforms and protection for all religious and ethnic groups, but recent crackdowns on minorities have reportedly cast doubt on all those promises that he made. In March, a government operation in the western city of Latakia resulted in mass killings within the Alawite community, the same sect as Assad, raising alarms among other minorities about their safety in the new political landscape. And now, with Israel actively intervening in Syria's internal clashes, fears are growing that the civil conflict could escalate into a wider regional and global crisis. Well, former U.S. President Joe Biden's Autopen is in news again, and it turns out Biden is writing off claims made by the Republicans that he might have not been in charge of high-profile clemency decisions issued under his name at the end of his term, which had put the legitimacy of his pardon signatures under the scanner. In an interview with the New York Times, Biden had reportedly shed light on the use of his Autopen, and that's during the final hours of his presidency. Defending his use of the said Autopen, Biden clarified that he authorized his staff to use his Autopen on clemency warrants because of the sheer number of pardons. However, all of them were personally approved by him at the end of his term, all 25 of them between December 2024 and January 2025. According to the NYT report, the Autopen was used to sign off on several high-profile pardons, including those for prominent figures like Dr. Anthony Fauci and General Mark Milley. However, Biden reportedly made one exception where he signed the pardon by hand, that of his son, Hunter's, and the justification behind it was to shield family from the legal costs of fighting potential cases. And as we speak, Biden's Autopen usage is under investigation by the Department of Justice. Meanwhile, the White House, alongside the U.S. Congress too, is reportedly looking into the matter of Biden's use of Autopen. On Monday, during his meeting with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte at the Oval Office, speaking to the reporters, the U.S. President Donald Trump said, and I quote here, that Biden knew nothing about what he was signing, unquote. He also reasserted the claim that Biden's use of the pen is a major scandal.
President Biden, of all people, spoke to the New York Times over the weekend. He did not speak to them on the record during his time in office at all, but he spoke to them recently. And he defended his use of the Autopen. But at the same time, the Times reports that he did not individually approve each name for the categorical pardons that applied to large numbers of people. What are your take on that? Any new revelations from that?
Well, I mean, you're talking about the Autopen. Look, the Autopen, I think, is maybe one of the biggest scandals that we've had in 50 to 100 years. This is a tremendous scandal.
Now, the Autopen, a signature duplicating device, has long been a flashpoint between the Republicans and the Democrats, with the former accusing the latter of inefficiency and inaction with regards to something as sensitive as pardons, a claim categorically rejected by the former U.S. President Joe Biden in the NYT interview. Not just that, Biden has reportedly also hit back at claims made by Republicans, such as his cognitive state may have impaired his functioning at work, calling them lies and speculations. Odisha is on edge. Mass demonstrations have broken out after a 20-year-old college student in Barcelona died by self-immolation. She had accused her professor of sexual harassment. Her death has united at least 8 political parties, including Congress and the CPIM. They have called for a statewide bandh on July 17th, demanding justice. The student, a second-year B.Ed integrated co-student at Fakir Mohan Autonomous College, set herself on fire last week. She suffered 95% burns and died late Monday night at AIIMS, Bhubaneswar. Now, before taking this extreme step, she had pleaded for help. She had reportedly reached out to the college principal, the district collector, the local MP and MLA, Odisha's Higher Education Minister and even the Union Education Minister. But despite repeated complaints and pleas, the accused professor was given a clean chit by the college's Internal Complaints Committee. Just a day before her self-immolation, in a statement, she alleged that the professor made sexual advances and threatened to fail her in exams if she resisted. Her death has sparked a political storm. Congress MP Rahul Gandhi has called it an organized murder. He blames the ruling party BJP for it, saying that the student was threatened, tormented and humiliated instead of receiving justice. BJP leaders also questioned the government's handling of the case. They criticized the timing of the post-mortem, which was done at 2 a.m., calling it an attempt to suppress facts and prevent public outrage. BJP leader Sulata Deo said that the party had met President Draupadi Murmu seeking her intervention, calling the incident shameful and a reflection of perhaps rising atrocities against women and tribals in Odisha. President Murmu also visited the student at AIIMS Bhubaneswar hours before her death, assuring her family of all help. Amid opposition blame, Odisha Chief Minister has vowed stringent action, promising the strictest punishment as per law against those found guilty.
She died around 11:45 p.m. I have met her family members. The doctors were trying their best to save her for the last 3 days. The government will take stringent action against those who are involved in this.
The Human Rights Commission has also raised concern over the state's education system and the failure to protect students from sexual harassment. This tragic death has not only exposed glaring gaps in institutional accountability, but it has also triggered a wider debate on women's safety on campuses. All right, in other news, the CIA has released bombshell new documents that reveal Lee Harvey Oswald was on their radar months before he assassinated former U.S. President John F. Kennedy in 1963. Washington Post reported that these new documents have been unearthed by a House task force. As per the report, documents show that CIA officer George Hernandez was leading the covert operations targeting anti-Castro Cuban exile groups. Now, these groups had direct contact with Oswald. The revelation adds fuel to the long simmering questions around what the agency knew about the assassination. The report says that Hernandez, who operated under the name Howard Mark Gabler, was responsible for infiltrating and influencing Cuban students' organizations opposed to Castro. One such group, known as the DRE, had multiple confrontations with Oswald, who publicly supported pro-Castro policies. Now, for decades, the CIA perhaps denied any connection to Oswald prior to the assassination. And Hernandez concealed his role during congressional investigations as well in a bid to mislead the lawmakers and the public. And this cover-up raises serious questions about what the CIA knew and why it withheld this information for such a long period of time. These revelations come amid efforts initiated by the Trump administration, which ordered a full and complete release of all JFK assassination files. While thousands of documents have since been made public, major portions remain classified or heavily redacted. Although the newly declassified documents do not provide direct evidence implicating the CIA knew about the plot itself, they deepen suspicions about the agency's actions and suggest a broader effort to obscure the truth. Experts are now calling for the release of all remaining JFK files to finally shed light on one of America's most enduring and controversial mysteries till date. While savoring pizzas or pastas with or without ketchup may soon burn a hole in the pockets of Americans. Why is that? As tomatoes grow in gardens or go in flames in kitchens, so will their prices, thanks to U.S. President Donald Trump slapping Mexico with tariffs. Just days after renewing threat to impose a blanket import tax on Mexican goods, Trump has lived up to his words, imposing a 17% tariff on humble fresh tomatoes. Moreover, Trump had separately threatened to impose a 30% tariff on imports from Mexico starting August 1st, weeks after negotiations with a major U.S. trading partner failed to reach any kind of a trade deal. U.S. Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick said in a statement that this rule change is in line with Trump's trade policies and approach with Mexico. On the other hand, calling the U.S. decision unfair, Mexico's government said that it would help local tomato manufacturers seek a deal with America, involving a suspension to the tomato duty as well as support them in seeking new markets. So what does all this mean for American shoppers and diners? Well, for starters, the levy could lead to a bump in tomatoes tagged prices at the supermarket, even as overall price rise. According to official figures, Mexico exported $3.3 billion of tomatoes last year, the vast majority of which is for the US. But the question is, what impact will this so-called tomato tax have overall? Even as consumers and businesses using Mexico-sourced tomatoes may feel the pinch, companies using tomatoes from the US may get a clean save. Ketchup brands like Heinz, which uses local ingredients, can keep serving its goods tariff-free, that is, but the real loss will be that of small businesses who rely on imported tomatoes for toppings and dressings, leaving them in a hot sauce. Turns out AI, besides being your all-time companion for things big and small, can also be a big-time water drainer. Courtesy tech giant Meta's new $750 million data center on the edge of Newton County, Georgia, which is reportedly leaving families nearby high and dry. How so? A steady shift in water pressure and traces of sediment found in tap waters gave it out. Here's what actually happened. Families residing within 1,000 meters from the Meta data center complained that their appliances involving usage of water went out of service. The sediment particularly raised suspicions of the event being linked to Meta's construction of the data center, which could have also very well mixed with groundwater and wells. This has also made access to clean water increasingly difficult. The situation is dire, with officials now warning of a water deficit by 2030, so much so that residents could soon be forced to ration their water-based needs. And that being said, a more serious problem is, besides water, the Meta Center also seems to be draining out bank balance, with families reportedly shelling out close to $5,000 or more for their water woes. And with cost of municipal water rising, they're all left with very less options at this point of time. According to the NYT report, Meta's Georgia data center uses 500,000 gallons of water daily, which is nearly 10% of the entire county's supply. If you do the math, clearly, you'll know that the amount that is flowing out of pockets of residents is huge. It's no surprise that AI data center demands water as a critical resource, especially so in data centers that helps power cutting-edge technology and keeps the computers running. And from the looks of it, AI's thirst for more water is not going to quench anytime soon, requiring millions of gallons of the resource in a single day. This alone should be a wake-up call for scientists and investors of such tech alike. It was a scene that stunned the country. The beloved Sycamore Gap Tree, standing for centuries beside Hadrian's Wall, suddenly gone. Well, today, the two people behind its destruction have been sentenced to 4 years and 3 months each. The duo, former friends, Daniel Graham and Adam Caritas. The court has told that the two men traveled to the site overnight in September 2023, where one of them recorded the act. Meanwhile, the other used a chainsaw to bring down the tree before taking a small section with them. It took less than 3 minutes to destroy what had taken more than a century to grow. The tree was a symbol of Northumberland and was the site of countless family visits, and also featured in the movie Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. The defendants were once close, but they have perhaps now fallen apart since their arrests, and they now blame the other for the act. During the trial, Graham claimed that his former friend had a fascination with this sycamore tree, saying that he described it as the most famous tree in the world, and spoken of wanting to cut it down and even keeping a piece of string in his workshop that he had used to measure its circumference. However, Caritas denied this, and the court that he could not understand the outcry over the story. That's what he told the court, and he said that it is just a tree. The tree and the wall were owned by the National Trust, and the spokesperson said that the needless felling of the Sycamore Gap Tree shocked people around the country and overseas as well, demonstrating the powerful connection between people and the country's natural heritage. Well, nature is unleashing its fury on the U.S., leaving a trail of devastation. In the United States, flash floods have turned the streets of New York City and New Jersey into rivers. This as southwestern U.S. battles scorching wildfires. In New York City, authorities have issued flash flood warnings as intense rainfall caused severe flooding, sending water gushing into a subway train platform. An eyewitness video showed flood water surging onto the platform of 28th Street Station as passengers watched from inside a train car. In yet another footage, passengers knelt on their seats or lifted their legs in a bid to avoid the flood water inside the train. Multiple subway lines were briefly suspended or running with delays.
Do you see it?
In New Jersey, cars were stuck in flood water, with the state's governor, Phil Murphy, declaring a state of emergency, urging people to stay indoors. According to the National Weather Service, the slow-moving summer storm was expected to continue showering the mid-Atlantic region into the middle of the week. Rescue workers in New Jersey's Scotch Plains waded into gushing floodwaters armed with red flotation devices after several drivers became stranded in the sudden surge. Floods on the eastern coast follow historic 4th of July flooding that devastated parts of central Texas, killing at least 131 people, including 3 dozen children, and leaving more than 100 people still missing. Rescue efforts along the Guadalupe River resumed after being halted a day earlier. Officials also made plans to drain reservoirs as they searched for victims. Volunteers have arrived in the area, helping residents clear debris, deliver food, and rebuild homes.
All of these volunteers, like Danny and his crew coming down from Texarkana, we got people coming. I had another guy that's a remediation restoration expert out of North Texas, up north of Dallas. He drove all the way down with his vans and about 8 guys, and they, did more work. So it's just tons of people helping out, and then providing food, providing tools, providing brooms, squeegees, everything necessary to get these, not just my houses, all of these houses fixed up.
While eastern U.S. battles severe flooding, devastating wildfires created chaos across southwestern U.S., local authorities are racing to contain wildfires that have hit the U.S. Four Corner region as well, where the states of Colorado, Arizona, Utah, and New Mexico share borders. A wildfire in Arizona's scenic Grand Canyon National Park recently destroyed a historic lodge and dozens of other structures. According to local authorities, the so-called Dragon Bravo blaze has grown to over 5,700 acres and is 0% contained. Another larger wildfire called the White Sage Fire, sparked by lightning near Jacob Lake, has scorched over 49,000 acres and remains 0% contained. Eyewitness video shows thick smoke columns billowing from the white sage fire spreading across the north rim of Arizona's region. Well, Indians have been investing in gold for generations, but its less glamorous cousin is making its way into their portfolios now. And the reason for it may not be traditional, but about the returns. It's just the last 3 months, silver has delivered a striking 21% return, leaving gold 5% rise trailing. For consumers who have spent years buying gold coins, this is reason enough to make their first investment in silver bars. This momentum is also visible in the surge of silver ETF investments in India. The convenience of holding silver through ETFs rather than managing the metal storage and weight is now attracting modern investors, especially in urban India. Traditionally associated with rural consumption, silver is now appealing to city dwellers too, thanks to its dual role as a rising asset and also as an industrial staple in fast-growing sectors like solar and electric vehicles. Consumer sentiment is also being shaped by global economic uncertainty, prompting a search for safer inflation-resistant options. As silver prices rally and imports increase, India's ties with the metal is clearly deepening. Once considered poor man's gold, silver is no longer playing second fiddle. For today's investor, it's a smart, shining choice. In a discovery that could rewrite how we understand planetary destruction, scientists have found a terrifying link between volcanic eruptions and giant continent-sized blobs hidden deep inside the Earth. Our next report telling you more.
Buried thousands of kilometers below our feet, there is a ticking time bomb. 2 colossal blobs of unknown material, each larger than a continent, have long mystified geologists. Now, in a stunning breakthrough, scientists say these deep Earth anomalies may be directly fueling the deadliest volcanic eruptions in Earth's history. These massive structures hiding near the Earth's core sit under Africa and the Pacific Ocean. The blobs have been there for billions of years, but recent research links them to the most violent eruptions our planet has ever seen, including events that triggered mass extinctions, global climate collapse, and the reshaping of entire continents. New research suggests that the deep Earth is even more dynamic than we realize. Future research aims to explore the chemical nature of blobs, which might be possible with simulations that track the evolution of their composition. The implications for the world are profound. Understanding these subterranean giants is not just academic pursuit, but a critical endeavor for assessing future geological hazards. Identifying these hidden massive structures provides an unprecedented window into our planet's most destructive forces, urging us to prepare for the deep-seated tremors that could, once again, dramatically reshape our world. Bureau Report, WION The World is One.
India has lost one of its stars, Forjas. The oldest man to complete a marathon has died at the age of 114 after being hit by a vehicle in Punjab's Jalandhar district. According to the police, Singh was walking in his native Beas village when the accident occurred. Authorities have now identified the vehicle as a Fortuner and are searching for the accused. The vehicle caused serious injuries to Singh, who died at a private hospital shortly after. It is perhaps a devastating way to go for a man who defied age all his life. Forjas Singh was born on April 1st, 1911, but he only started running at the age of 89. In fact, he took up marathon running after moving to the UK to find solace after the death of his youngest son. This after he chanced upon a running club, and what started as a mere coincidence soon became the driving force of his life. He proved that it is literally never too late to start something new. He went on to become an inspiration for millions worldwide. With a career spanning almost 14 years between 2000 and 2013, Forjas Singh completed 9 full marathons, including 6 London marathons. He also set up his own running club in the UK, which also functioned as a charity. His resilience and bravery gained him several admirers. He became a torchbearer at the 2012 London Olympics and was even honoured by the late Queen Elizabeth for contributions to sport and charity. He credited his longevity to simple lifestyle and healthy diet. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi paid tribute to Forjas Singh, describing him exceptional athlete with incredible determination. Unfortunately, none of Forjas' milestones were taken into consideration by the Guinness Book of World Records. That was because he could not show a birth certificate from 1911. But Forjas' legacy cannot be measured by records. It is internal, one that will stand the test of time, just like he did. Barcelona and Spain superstar Lamine Yamal is facing an investigation for hiring a group of people with dwarfism as entertainers for his 18th birthday party. Yamal's actions have further prompted outrage from differently abled groups in Spain. Spain's Ministry for Social Rights has asked the prosecutors to open a probe into a private event that Yamal hosted on the outskirts of Barcelona to celebrate his 18th birthday. The ministry is looking into whether the party violated laws banning entertainment that mocks people with disabilities. This comes after a formal complaint by Spain's Association for People with Androplasia and Other Skeletal Dysplasias, or the ADEE, which threatened legal action. In a statement published on its website, it said, and I quote here, "These actions violate not only current legislation but also the fundamental ethical values of a society that seeks to be egalitarian and respectful." Meanwhile, Jesus Martin Blanco, Director General for Disability Rights at the Ministry, expressed concern that Yamal might be setting a dangerous example for the young fans in Spain. Yamal has over 36 million Instagram followers. Now in 2023, Spain officially banned hiring of people with dwarfism as entertainers, especially in traditional roles like comic, bullfighting or mock performances, as it is being seen as demeaning or perpetuating harmful stereotypes. But people with dwarfism can still work as entertainers, actors or even performers, as long as the work does not degrade their dignity or stereotype their condition. The Mafia-themed party was held on Saturday, a day before Yamal turned 18. It was attended by many of his teammates such as Robert Lewandowski as well as stars from the music world. Guests were not permitted to film at the event, but a video emerged of a group of people with dwarfism heading into the party. While Yamal is facing criticism from the Spanish government, one of the performers has backed Yamal, saying that they were not disrespected and they were allowed to work in peace. In fact, he hit out at the ADEE, saying that the organization has been trying to harm them from doing their jobs and it has not offered any kind of help. He added that all the fuss has only come about purely because it was Lamine Yamal's party. Yamal might be only 18, but he is already considered one of the footballers in the world. The Spaniards even a contestant to win the Ballon d'Or. His release clause at Barcelona is over $1 billion. And with that, we slip into a very short break. Thanks very much for staying with us. You are watching WION World. Stay tuned.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape